What would happen if the yield on the 10-year note goes to 4%, as some people like Jamie Dimon have said could happen?
Well, Mr. Dimon's comments definitely got a lot of press earlier this week, and when he announced that he sees rates going toward 4%. There's a couple of things to unpack here. First of all, I'm not disinclined to believe him. I'm not going to call him a liar. There's an interest rate cycle, and I think there are very good reasons why we may be in a part of the cycle where interest rates start to rise. We're seeing inflation start to tick up on the back of a stronger economy. We're seeing the Fed being less accommodative. All that is the sort of stuff that leads to a more negative part of the credit cycle, as opposed to what we've seen for the past 10 years, which was a very favorable credit cycle. The question then becomes, is that number correct or not? I'll leave that aside. Is the general trend correct or not? I'm going to say yes. But also the third part is timing. When are we going to get to 4%? Next week? Well, that would be catastrophic. By the end of next year, well, that would be a very gradual rise, and the market would have plenty of time to adapt to something like that. So that really becomes the problem. Is it's not necessarily a matter of direction. I'd like to think that the economy isn't so levered and so fragile that if we got a tick up in rates from 3 to 4%, that it would cause a major problem. But even if that were to happen gradually, the more gradual a rate rise occurs, the easier it is for the markets to deal with. There are definitely signs of stress that one would have to watch for. Depending on, people have been extending their duration on the fixed income markets. And duration, it's a tricky concept. I'm not going to get into all the mathematics of it here. I suggest that you learn about it. But the longer the term bonds you have, the more duration they tend to have. And roughly speaking, for each percentage point rise, you lose that percentage of you lose the percentage of your duration. So let's say if it's the duration on a bond is 7 years, which is probably a 10-year bond. It's a tough concept, but let's say a 10-year bond is a 7-year duration, and the price and the interest rate ticks up 1%. You're probably going to lose 7% on your holdings. I'm greatly oversimplifying for the purposes of this video, but so as people have been extending duration, that makes them more sensitive to markdowns in their portfolio. Again, if you're buying something that's a safe bond, you'll get paid back, but if you're getting paid back in 10 years at par, and you bought it at par, it may not feel so good if it's now at 93 because you've got a mark-to-market loss against you. So those are and if you've done it on, by the way, if you've done that on leverage, that could create a whole other set of problems, such as margin, deficient margins and stuff like that. So in and of itself, we've had healthy economies with interest rates, long-term interest rates well above 4. That in and of itself should not be a market killer. It's what happens in the meantime. It's how does it get there, why does it get there, and how fast does it get there. I think if we're seeing a gradual rise, it's just something to deal with, and you'll adjust as the markets will adjust as they do. If it's because of an inflationary spike, depends on the timing of that. Remember, long-term interest rates are a function of short-term rates and essentially inflationary expectations. Again, an oversimplification, but inflationary expectations seem quite managed. If people really start to see them that change, you've got a problem. Secondly, secondarily, you've got a very flat interest rate curve right now, and that's because the short end of the curve has been rising and the long end of the curve has been staying relatively stable. It's been going up much more slowly at the 10-year side than it has on the, let's say, the 2-year side, which is why you're seeing a flat interest rate curve. If the long bond goes up and steepens the yield curve, that can be very good for banks in some ways because they tend to borrow short and lend long, so they can write loans at bigger levels. On the other hand, those who own the debt get it marked against them. There's a lot of moving parts when it comes to the debt market. I would say on the surface, the 4% call got a lot of attention, but it's really a matter of how fast and why, and that will determine the impact on broader markets in general.